people. Ancient teapot over here cracking me up. I love the fact that there's multiple buffalo. I think that's awesome. Hi, Brenda. Nice to see you. Garth David. Nice to see you. Ancient teapot. Everybody's here. All the fun people. Hi, Mary. Hi, animal lady. Yeah, so how's everybody doing? Hi. You guys are all so prompt. Look at you. 4 p.m., 4 p.m., 4 p.m. M Space Brew. Nice to see you. What's that in the... I can't see it. Gucci. Just me. All the usual suspects are here. I do feel like we should call you the usual suspects instead of the dreadheads. Anyway, the reason I am sharing, I am extremely tired. You guys are going to have to maybe bear with me a bit because I have that tired of like, you don't feel that tired while you're pushing through it. And then when you're finally there and it's over, you're so tired you can't lift your arms. So that's where I am at, which is why I postponed yesterday. I just did not have the strength to think about Lauren Matthias, honestly. And then I already had this one scheduled for today about John, so I've pushed Lauren until next week. But the reason I am sharing moving is hard, and it was just there was 2 days there where it was just I was back and forth twice on the ferry, and I basically did everything myself. My downstairs neighbor, hi Rosalie, nice to see you. My downstairs neighbor helped me load up the truck, but on this end I was by myself unloading, and I got here at 11 o'clock at night, and I had to be on the 10 o'clock ferry in the morning, so I had to get up at 6 and unload the truck. And yeah, and then I had to get back to Vancouver and drop off the truck and then take transit back to pick up the dog and then walk the dog and then go back and clean the apartment and then load up the car again and then drive to the ferry. And then, and I got here again at like 11 o'clock at night. So yeah, the ferry it's an added stress, but all in all, I mean, I got to say, literally it's 5 weeks from the day that I came over to stay with Garth David, who is in the chat here with us. She offered me a stay in her bed and breakfast. And I was like, hey, I want to move there. And that was 5 weeks ago. And now I'm here. And I have 2 jobs. And hi, Molly Colleen. And yes, and Lucia, nice to see you. Carolyn, greetings. So yeah, I'm a little tired. But I'm feeling really just so pleased about being here. Even just the difference of like, I've been back and forth 4 times in the last month getting things organized. And I feel different even being here now. Like now I actually live here. It feels different than it did even a week ago when I was here overnight. So amazing. As I was driving to the ferry to get here on Wednesday night for the final, I'm here now, that's it. I'm looking up at the sky, and what do I see but a half moon? And I just moved to Half Moon Bay. So I was feeling very like Julius Caesar, that the omens were speaking to me. And then today, so this is why this picture is up right here. That is a photograph of Vermeer's The Milkmaid that I bought at the Hospital Auxiliary thrift store in Seashell today for $3.50. And it is auspiciousness, Ancient Teapot. Thank you. This is another good sign. So I'm just going to tell you a quick story, but my foster mom had a copy of this painting in the kitchen of her house for all the years that I lived there and for many, many, many years afterwards. And it was a reproduction, but like a proper, I'm sure they're mass produced, but it's actually paint on a canvas. And it was on the wall behind the dishwasher forever. And when I had been living there for about a year, I know I was feeling very comfortable. I was making dinner one night with Susanna, my friend whose mom had let me live with them. And we were making spaghetti, and we threw the spaghetti at the wall to see if it was ready. If it sticks to the wall, it's ready. And some of it landed, 2 strands of it landed on the Vermeer um, reproduction. And we thought that was hilarious because we were like 16 and 17 or something like that. And we left it there. We thought it was funny, and we left it there to see how long it would take for Mom to notice. And it literally took her. It was many, many, many months, if not over a year. Like, it was so long that it was just ridiculous. And we never told her. We just waited, and she finally noticed and pulled the spaghetti off, and it peeled the paint off. And so it left the spaghetti marks. And she was not mad at me very often. My foster mom, I can think of twice off the top of my head. And that was one of the times. But the painting stayed there for years and years. Anyway, and there it was today when I walked in the thrift store. There it was. And I just thought, okay, so if the half moon on the night that I moved to Half Moon Bay wasn't enough, then certainly this painting is enough. So it's in my kitchen now, and I'm delighted with it. So I just wanted to share that fun story. Delighted to see everybody. BGP30. Nice. Glad you could make it. Yeah, so I mean, it's one of my favorite stories about Mom. It was extra funny because it was Mom. You had to kind of be there maybe, but we didn't realize it would peel the paint off, in my defense. We did not realize it would peel the paint off. We just thought it was funny. Our brains were not yet fully formed, so I think you can forgive us for that. But yeah, it just felt like felt a little bit like she was here with me, even though I don't believe in any of that woo-woo stuff, really. It's still nice, yeah. Make sure it's al dente. Thank you. Sorry, Lucia. Anyway, so yeah, I wanted to share that, and then I just wanted to share this here. So I was looking at the idea of making some merch, and I put up this post yesterday, and I'm kind of 2 minds about it. I kind of like it, and it kind of feels a bit busy and a bit AI to me. I feel like it looks too much AI, but I like the idea. And I like the coffee cup as well, which Garth David pointed out to me that it's the colors are similar to the Ukraine flag with the wheat and the sky. So I just wanted to share those. I haven't settled on anything yet. I'm literally just was too lazy to do much of anything yesterday but doodle on my computer. So I was looking at those. And then today I thought we would look at I wanted to show you this. This is Docket Decoder has done a new video about John Matthias, and it's an hour and 45 minutes. So I haven't seen it yet. He just put it out today, so I'm like looking forward to settling down with this. Yeah, I like the idea. I'm thinking I want some. I don't know. I'm going to look at more ideas, but I like the saying "consequences are my love language." Hannah Dockrell commented on the post saying that I need some merch that says "an editor is your friend." And I think actually that's a good one. And I think that we're probably going to be using that phrase a lot today because we're reading John's bio again. But yeah, just something to look forward if you have not seen this yet. Docket Decoder's great, and he does a really good job. And he just put it up today. So head on over there and sub up and watch him. And then here we are with Dr. John and his buying. Oh, you just watched it. Excellent as usual. Yeah, I'm not surprised. He's great. Today was the hearing for his disciplinary hearing, and I managed at the last second to score a Zoom link, and it's a whole lot of not much of anything in terms of the proceedings. They go through a lot of disciplinary hearings. The person who is being potentially disciplined is not there, doesn't have any role. The speaker, it's the DA or the assistant DA or something that is there, and he says this is what's been recommended, and then they recommend dismissing it, and then somebody puts in a motion to dismiss, and somebody seconds it, and it's all over. And from what I could understand, they don't use names; they just use case numbers. But they mentioned a podcaster with a complaint from the public, and the recommendation was to dismiss it, and the motion was made and seconded, and it was dismissed. I cannot swear to you that that was the one for Dr. John, but there wasn't any other that seemed like it was that for Dr. John. You know what I'm saying? And the only two that weren't dismissed were not, they could not possibly have been the situation with Dr. John. They were completely different situations. So that's my understanding. I believe that Andy Copsa might be a better source for, being 100% sure about that, but that's how it seemed to me. So, yeah, it was. I mean, if the ethics board isn't going to look at the shit he's done and say that that's unethical behavior, then I don't know what the fuck you're supposed to do with somebody like him. But we'll see. I guess it's not over yet. Hey, the Betty Boop. And so Nevada endorses this behavior. It seems like it. Are You Sunny Now says, I just stopped watching Dr. Dakota to jump over to this live, then I'll go back. Yeah, everybody's gonna be a little bit jawned out by the end of the day. I'll tell you what. If you have not been through this bio yet, I'll tell you what, it is something else. And it is a lot. So I'm actually starting to feel a little perked up now that I'm here talking to y'all. So we might actually get through the whole thing today. But I think we better get started because I am pretty tired. And there's no guarantee. Hey, Maury, nice to see you. Glad you could make it. Thank you for your comment absolving me of my laziness yesterday. I was tired. So Where the Wild Things Are. This is that's John on the shoulders of the monster there. I guess that's how he sees himself as a child. Yeah, I mean, it's bad, right? The Ancient Teapot says this bio causes so much cringe we might all get hernias. It is beyond bad. Like I will not be able to mention all of the many bad things about it because there are so many that it just is. We would literally be here. It would take me 4 or 5 episodes to get through it. It's so bad. Like right from the get-go. So I'm going to try to read the paragraph out and then go back and talk about the paragraph. But I always say that, and then I get so annoyed that I end up interrupting the paragraph to say how lame it is. So you'll just have to bear with me. My intentions are good. He was a large charge. Well, the muffler is not underneath a semi anyway, right? Semi trucks have smokestacks on the front of the vehicle above the engine, right? So, yeah, right. Just Me is talking about saying he's competing with Chad Daybell for near-death experiences. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is suspect because of his whole thing with no-Joes and trying to get involved with the adolescent psychiatric scene with the wilderness camps and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, I know he's not LDS, but that doesn't mean that he couldn't get to be, couldn't get to have their stamp of approval, right? The way that wilderness camps, yeah, just awful. Another college-educated idiot, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, he's the kind. I mean, if you look at the pictures that Lauren posted not long ago on Facebook, I think I showed them last time I was doing the 9-hour live, and John was like, he was a handsome guy in high school and college. He was a football player, and he was in good shape, and he was not bad looking. And then he just failed, right? All of his sports skills and all of his brilliance in school, it all just came to nothing, right? So he had all this promise and nothing happened. Hi, Artmans. I have seen that you emailed and I have not had the wherewithal to read it yet, but you are on my list. He doesn't strike me as outdoorsy either, but he does claim that he was very outdoorsy at one time, right? Yeah. I mean, he was in good shape and he was a handsome young man. You can't, I mean, I'm not gonna, you can't take it away from him, right? That's fine. But obviously, he has unresolved trauma that he sublimated by overeating and, you know, hiding away with his books and all the rest of it. And he strikes me as possibly being on the spectrum. And so that might have contributed to his inability to, you know, after leaving the comfortable nest of school and home and everything. Hey, Blue River, nice to see you. It's been a while. Yeah, I mean, he was, what are you going to say? Yeah, he's a weird dude. There's definitely unresolved shit going on with him, in my opinion, and it has all revealed itself, shall we say. And it's this bio, if you ever go into, look up a psychiatrist and you read anything like this, do not go see that psychiatrist. I would run a fucking mile if I read this bio from a psychiatrist I was considering going to seek help from. Right? Yeah, he doesn't talk about his dad, really, does he? And he only talks about his mom to say that she never said she loved him until she was almost dead, basically. Yeah, I think he's on the spectrum. I mean, it seems like he's certainly not. He's socially awkward. Maybe he has social anxiety. Maybe he's on the spectrum. I can't diagnose that, but there's something going on there. Anyway, let's get started, or we'll be here forever. I'll try to get through the paragraph. When I was 5 years old, my mother accelerated onto the on-ramp of Willow Road outside of Chicago, and the side door, which had been slightly ajar, inadvertently swung open, tossing my unsuspecting body out onto the highway like someone losing control of an empty brown McDonald's bag sitting in the back seat of the car for days and waiting to be thrown out. So the whole paragraph is one sentence. Moira, must be Moira, she's saying good morning. Nice to see you. One sentence, one extremely run-on sentence, and an extremely annoying sentence. So an editor is your friend. I find it hard to believe that he read back over that and thought that it was good, because it is so bad. It's ridiculous. So when I was 5 years old, my mother accelerated onto the on-ramp of Willow Road outside of Chicago, and the side door, which had been slightly, that's a lot. Maybe, I think he's trying to start with he's trying to grab your attention, right? But as far as opening lines go, right? It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. Those are two complete sentences, right? And you're hooked, right? What is the Pride and Prejudice one? It's a fact well known that a gentleman with whatever it is, what is an income of £10,000 a year is going to be, the kind of line that hooks you in. And I think that's what he was trying to do, but he didn't have an editor and he doesn't have any writing skills. So, and he also thinks he has writing skills. My feeling about this last time was that John writes like a promising grade 6 student who has picked up the idea of literary devices, but has no idea how to use them, to good effect. So just to say the door inadvertently swung open. Well, a door can't inadvertently do anything. First of all, the door inadvertently swung open, tossing my unsuspecting body out. Again, the door is the doer of the action here, and the door cannot toss anything. It's a door. Um, and it certainly can't toss anything like someone losing control of an empty brown McDonald's bag. So the empty brown McDonald's bag has been sitting in the back seat of the car for days, but someone is suddenly losing control of that bag. And the bag was waiting to be thrown out. Again, bags don't wait, right? A bag is an object. So right away, I am completely never going to see this psychiatrist for love or money, because this is embarrassing, and you need to have a PhD in order to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist or whatever. So what the actual fuck is this? Do you know what? When I was like 5 or 6, I was in the car with my mom. It was a white Volkswagen Beetle, and we were leaving the patat frite stand in Quebec, and we were going camping. And she pulled out of the parking lot, and the door swung open, and I was seat belted in, and I didn't fall out of the car. But these things do happen, and maybe there even was some incident in his life involving a door swinging open and him feeling like he wasn't cared for or whatever. But this did not happen. So instinctively, I rolled onto the pavement at 40 miles per hour and tucked into the fetal position when I spied a semi-truck approaching from behind. My outstretched arms hit the pavement, tearing the skin open and leaving a 2-foot-long trail of blood painted along the white lines of the highway. When I curled my knees into my body, the pool of blood soaked into my t-shirt. The truck swerved slightly, trying to avoid me, but the driver realized the futility of such a last-minute adjustment, and he swung the truck directly over my now motionless body. Drips of corrosive diesel engulfed my body, and the engine wailed and hummed as the brakes screeched in a last-ditch effort to right the truck. The muffler grazed my shoulder, shredding my t-shirt and skin, and the semi-truck thrust me out of its entrails without much fanfare. Are you guys okay? Because holy smokes, that is a lot. So instinctively, he rolled onto the pavement at 40 miles an hour. I very much doubt that he rolled onto the pavement at 40 miles an hour. Also, if he was in the passenger seat and his mom was coming onto the on-ramp, how did he roll into oncoming traffic? Wouldn't oncoming traffic be on that side and he's on this side? Wouldn't the traffic be on the right and not the... Do you know what I mean? Like, logistically, it doesn't even make any sense. So first of all, so he's in the fetal position when he spies a semi-truck approaching from behind, but his outstretched arms hit the pavement. So he was in the outstretched arms fetal position, I guess, as he was rolling with his arms outstretched, which would be like trying to drive with a clamp on your wheel, as far as I understand it. So again, I am completely distracted from the story. I have no idea what's even going on in this fucking story, because I'm so distracted by the fact that none of this can have happened this way, and the writing is so garbage. So off to a good start. My outstretched arms hit the pavement, tearing the skin open. So your outstretched arms didn't tear your skin open, right? The action, the subject of the sentence is his outstretched arms. So his outstretched arms are tearing the skin open and leaving a 2-foot-long trail of blood painted along the highway, because that doesn't make sense, right? I mean, an editor is your fucking friend, John. Seriously, this is embarrassing. One of the things that's so embarrassing about these people is that they are so fucking egotistical and arrogant that they think that they don't need an editor. It's amazing. So now he's back in the fetal position, curling his knees into his body, and the pool of blood soaked into his t-shirt. Oh, okay, so he's like literally sliding across the pavement, and the blood is being scraped out of his outstretched arms, and yet now he's rolling, and the blood should be behind him by my right, because he's doing 40 kilometers an hour, miles an hour, if you remember, right? So how is he now getting soaked in the blood that should be well behind him at this point? 40 miles an hour. So that don't make no sense. The truck swerved slightly, trying to avoid me, but how does he know what the driver realized? Is he now inside the driver's head? Because a minute ago, was a first-person narrative, right? First-person point of view. So now he's an omniscient narrator, and he's inside the truck driver's head, apparently. And he swung the truck directly over my now motionless body. Oh, okay, stop moving. Drips of corrosive diesel engulfed his body. So why is there diesel leaking out of this truck? That's not normal. Does he think that's normal? Because that's not fucking normal. I mean, I know there are hunks of junk on the road, and there could have been a hunk of junk that was leaking diesel, but it is surely not leaking 6-year-old boy-sized drops of diesel that can engulf a small child in them. So that doesn't make sense. And again, I'm like, what is even happening in this story? None of this makes any kind of sense. The engine wailed and hummed as the brakes screeched in a last-ditch effort. Well, we just had a last-minute adjustment, and now we've got a last-ditched effort. But over here, he put in a dash, and over here, he didn't use a dash. So that's distracting. A style sheet is your friend, John. That's why you need an editor, you brain-dead idiot. The muffler, we have already mentioned, is on the top of the engine, on the front of the semi, on the tractor, right? It is not, they don't have a muffler that comes all the way out the back of the trailer, because they don't have a trailer on sometimes, right? What are they going to do with all the fucking exhaust pipe that would be as long as a trailer? That's why they have a smokestack, John. Again, an editor is your friend. An editor would point this out to you and say, well, maybe it was a brake pot, even though this is obviously a lie. Maybe you could say it was a brake pot that scrapes your shoulder, right? Right, 18-wheelers, right? Yeah, they have like 18, they have like, what have they got, like 40 feet of exhaust pipe? It's absurd. Okay. He grazed his shoulder, shredding his t-shirt and his skin, and the semi-truck thrust me out of its entrails without much fanfare. So first of all, you weren't inside the workings of the truck. You were underneath the truck, and it drove over you. So you weren't in its entrails. So that makes no sense. And you cannot be thrust without fanfare, to my opinion. Like that, those two things don't match. Right? No fanfare is like nothing happened. Thrust is like something fucking happened. So we're 2 paragraphs in, and so far we have a failing grade, Dr. John. When the driver pulled over to the side of the road, everyone, including my mother, assumed I was dead. Ongoing traffic swerved to avoid my motionless body, still tucked in the middle of one of the busiest highways in suburban Chicago, until I gathered myself, stood up, and ran across the road to safety. From across the 4-lane divide, I could see my mother crying. Now, it was the first and last time I have ever witnessed my mother crying. The truck driver told my mother that he heard a loud thud sound as his truck careened over my body, and he knew I had been instantly killed. It was the muffler swiping my shoulder. No, it wasn't, John. The truck driver had been crying too. My body's brief immobility in the middle of the road only added to the worries. Okay, it's a lot, people. An editor is your friend. So what does the driver pulling over to the side of the road, like when the driver pulled over to the side of the road, everyone assumed I was dead? Like, what? It was like when the driver pulled over to the side of the road, everyone gathered together and discovered that they all thought I was dead or something. Like, it doesn't make sense. The when the driver pulled over does not connect to everyone thinking you were dead. So again, I'm distracted from the story, such as it is. Ongoing traffic. Swerve to avoid my motionless body. You cannot be tucked in the middle of something unless you've got like blankets around you, right? Maybe you're tucked in the middle of a blanket. You cannot be tucked in the middle of a road. You're literally like out there naked and alone in the middle of the highway. You're not tucked anywhere. Until I gathered myself, stood up, and ran across the road to safety. So he ran across a 4-lane highway at 6 years old after just being hit by the muffler of a semi that is going at highway speed. So he was motionless for a few seconds, and then he just got up and ran across through traffic, and that was all good. Okay, that makes sense. And then now, for some reason, he's on the other side of the 4-lane highway, which makes no sense. He could see his mother crying. It was the first and last time I have ever witnessed my mother crying. So that I have ever witnessed is the wrong way to say that. It's the wrong tense. And also, you're telling the story from a first person point of view. You cannot now tell us, like, this is a first person narrative. You're now going into the future. So it was the first time I saw my mother cry. Would be fine. But no. The truck driver told my mother that he had heard a loud thud sound. Like, that just doesn't even. What the fucking. Are you even kidding me? If this ever happened and you were the truck driver, you would not be saying to the mother of the child, "Oh, I heard a loud thud sound. Pretty sure he's dead." Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like if you're driving a semi and something like that has just happened, you are going to know very well that you need to be very fucking careful about what you say and all of it. Like, even though I would not say that that was the truck driver's fault, obviously, what a thing to fucking say. And it doesn't ring true at all. None of this rings true. It's shocking to me that John, Mr. PhD John, who has evaluated hundreds and hundreds of offenders and run hundreds of groups, cannot tell that this is actual dog shit writing. And that this is that not only is the writing bad, but that the story doesn't make sense and isn't believable. And you're supposed to believe that this guy can evaluate whether or not people are going to reoffend when he can't even evaluate whether a story is believable or not? It's shockingly bad. Yeah, right. The truck driver would never say that. It was the muffler. Obviously, it wasn't the muffler. The truck driver had been crying too. My body's brief immobility in the middle of the road only added to worries. See, like, I feel like an editor would have really helped you here. It's all messed up, right? My body's brief immobility, like my immobility, first of all. But that belongs kind of at the beginning of the sentence or of the paragraph where he was talking about pulling over and the loud thud that like all of that belongs back with that. So anyway, structural editors are your friends too, John. Not just for sentence cohesion and all the rest of it. Okay. My mother asked me if I was hurt. I said no. Even then, I was learning the value of being stoic. What do you mean, even then? What does that mean? I feel like is he trying to like be foreshadowing or something there? I guess. Or that little sentence is doing a lot of work, and it's not doing a good job of it. Like it needs a lot of help. I mean, I get what he's saying. Obviously, he's saying that in his family, feelings were not valued, and sucking it up was what was expected of him. It's just badly expressed. We drove home without any discussion of the incident. Like, there is no fucking way that he flew out of that car at 40 miles an hour and ripped his arms all open as he was skidding across the pavement and getting smacked in the shoulder by a fucking semi at highway speed. And there was no discussion of it. There's no fucking way that happened. There's no way that happened. A child of that age could not. None of this could have happened the way that he's saying it. It's so ridiculous. Sorry, I was not going to interrupt. I was going to read the whole paragraph, but I forgot. My mother never told my father about the accident, and there was no visit to the hospital, even though my body hurt for months afterwards. Blood soaked my t-shirt and blue jeans. Again, like that sentence is out of place. An editor would tell you that. There's just no way that this happened like this. I mean, I can believe that something happened to him that might have involved the car door swinging open or even him falling out in the parking lot or, something. But there is no way that he rolled onto the highway and got run over by a fucking semi-truck and hit by that truck at highway speed and just nothing. There's no way. From that moment forward, the accident was relegated to complete silence for nearly 40 years. Okay, the accident can't be relegated to silence because the accident can't speak in the first fucking place, John. So you would be relegated to silence, but that don't make no sense. For 40 years, as if it only existed in some imaginary world that children inhabit. Oh, where's that leading? As if the entire incident had merely been a Looney Tunes cartoon and I was the road runner who got up unscathed from under the anvil every time. It's actually the coyote who gets hit by the anvil every time, not the road runner. The anvil is intended for the road runner, but if you recall, the entire point of it was that it backfired on the coyote every time. What's interesting, Molly Colleen says, what's interesting is this exposes his pathology and penchant for exaggeration to make himself feel important. Yeah, I mean, it's exposing in every way. It is just so embarrassing. Yeah, this was the start of his triumphant athletic career. Yeah, it was a real triumph. So anyway, yes, except I wasn't unscathed. My body had healed, but the emotional wounds from the accident cut an invisibly cavernous swath within my small 5-year-old body that ran deep and wide, touching every capillary and blood vessel, capillary, running into and out of my heart, and every nerve ending and axon seeking entrance and exit from my brain. Okay. I don't even know. It's just so bad. The writing is so bad. The emotional wounds? I guess trauma is an emotional wound. Yeah, man. The emotional wounds from the accident cut and invisibly cavernous. That's not even a thing. Like, how can something be invisibly cavernous? It could be invisible and cavernous, but a cavern in a small body running deep and wide doesn't make sense, because a cavern is huge, deep and wide is big, and a small body isn't. And maybe the contrast is what he's aiming for, maybe. But again, it's just very distracting. And yeah, I mean, he's obviously trying to say that there was no part of him that wasn't affected by the accident. And yeah, okay. Now, this would be a good opening sentence. I think I said this last time. This would be a good opening sentence. The nightmares began suddenly and without warning on the evening of the accident. Right? Great opening sentence. An editor is your friend, Dr. John. A semi-truck rolling down the freeway out of control, swerving frantically, plowing directly into my body. On perpetual repeat, over and over. That's not a sentence, and you're not a good enough writer to use sentence fragments, John. I awakened 20 times on that first night. So it's just awkward, because he's not talking about the first night. He's talking about, I mean, he says the nightmares began suddenly and without warning on the evening of the accident. I think we could use the without warning. Suddenly is also without warning. But it's weird and awkward that now he's back to specifically that night again, because we're already thinking long term, right? That the nightmares began and that they carried on. So it's just awkward. Every time my head hits the pillow, also he keeps changing tenses. Sometimes he's speaking in past tense and sometimes he's speaking in present tense, and it's distracting. Do you see what I mean about how bad it is? Like, it's so bad. It's so bad. It's not like there's a few things that are like, the writing's a bit awkward or whatever. It is absolute dog shit all the way through. It's unbelievable. Sorry, I keep interrupting myself. Every time my head hits the pillow, I meet the same semi-truck again and again, rolling on down the road and heading in only one direction. Again, rolling on down the road implies that it's rolling on down the road. It's past you over there. It's just all so distracting. And heading only in one direction. But, it's heading at me. That's not the opposite of what you just implied. Okay. Each morning I awake without rest. Without having rested is the correct way to say that. You don't wake with rest. Rest is a noun. You dumb, terrible writer. My pillow and sheets drenched in sweat. I begin to turn on my bedroom light each night to make the nightmares subside. They continue unabated. Same truck, same story, same result. Again, that's another sentence fragment. A bunch of sentence fragments in the same paragraph. On repeat, over and over, another one. Megan did this too. Just garbage. Eventually, the semi-truck evolves into a train, and then the train becomes an airplane. The objects become larger and more foreboding with each passing week. Like, how big can they get? I'm now distracted again. How big can they get? Are we talking like planet-sized now? What is happening? Each one rolling head-on directly into my child's body and fragile psyche. This is so much like Megan's writing, I almost think she wrote it. Eventually, the ingenuity of the imagination is limitless. Oh, is it? Now you're just going to fucking lecture us on what the imagination is? I thought we were having a first-person narrative of a story. Especially if survival depends upon it. As my small, he's fucking, oh my God, is this the first-person narrative of a small child? or it is the remembrance of an adult. I can't even tell what we're talking about. As my small head lays down, the terror goes up. There are many nights when I awake screaming from night terrors. Each dream has the same underlying theme. And then he uses a dash, and then he puts a space after the dash. And then he says destruction, violence, death. So those are three different themes. And an M dash would have been the appropriate punctuation in that situation. An editor is your friend. Over time, these objects of death begin to transform. So, like, I don't know, a truck is not an object of death, it's a truck. So, it's very heavy handed, right? The metaphor is like it's too much, right? For one thing, Megan did this partly too, right? This super heightened, ramped up emotion, and he tries to ram it into every sentence. And so none of the sentences have any impact because they're all the same kind of, the same heightened presentation. And also, it's exhausting on the reader because there's nowhere for you to rest, right? There's no time to rest and take a breather, take a, you know, pause for a beat, right? It's just this constant, and we can't sustain that. That's part of the reason why it's so awful to listen to it. But wait, there's more. Right? This is an excellent point, Deaf Otter. I'm actually baffled how someone who reads so many books could write so badly. I was wondering about that, and I was thinking, just a guess, the difference between writing fiction and writing, you know, academics style. Maybe he thinks this is. I mean, he does seem to have awareness of literary devices. He just has no skill in using them. Yeah, right? There's nothing substantial. And this whole thing is like he's waking up every single night screaming from night terrors, and yet the family is completely silent about this for 40 years. Like it doesn't make actual sense, right? It makes he's hammering the point home too hard, and it does I just, even if his parents didn't do the right thing in terms of comforting him or helping him to get help, or taking him to the hospital or any of that stuff, um, they would have to respond in some way to night terrors, night after night after night after night, right? It just doesn't make sense that through all his childhood he's waking up screaming, and his family is just silent about what the reason might be for that. Like, it's weird. Yeah, slowly over time, these objects of death begin to transform. The trucks become wild predators, the trains become amorphous monsters, the planes become vampires. Sure, they do. Again, he's using a dash instead of an M dash. Monsters, dash, those objects of social disruption and mayhem, those objects displacing the status quo, those objects assaulting our safety and complacency, another dash, begin to creep into my dreams until they become an obsession. Like, okay, monsters aren't objects either, right? They're creatures. Objects, like the word object, unless you're talking about the subject and object of a sentence, an object doesn't have agency. And we don't refer to creatures and people and animals as objects. We just don't. So, right, like if he's listening to somebody and they're continually referring to people as objects or animals as objects or other creatures as objects, would that not ring a bell for him that that person is like sociopathic or something, right? That they see people as objects. It's weird. I think John's a compulsive liar too, lemon baked. I'm glad you could make it. Anyway, blah. They're not objects. I'm watching monster movie again. We're in the past. We're in the present tense again. I'm watching monster movies whenever I can, even though I'm much too young to understand them. My mother allows it because she experiences such guilt. How do you know that? Is that from your conversation that you had after 40 years that she told you that? I mean, that could be, but again, aren't we in a first person narrative? So shouldn't you be saying my mother allows me to watch these movies? I don't know why. It doesn't seem like the right thing to let a small child watch these movies, but perhaps she felt so guilty and this was the only way that she had of like anything at all other than being able to read her mind or being able to whatever. My other two siblings sleep soundly in bed as I burn the midnight oil in front of horror movies. I build models of monsters. I clip pictures of the most frightening images I can find, keeping them in a spiral notebook as if somehow classifying and binding them can keep them at bay. It doesn't work. It's too late. The creatures have been loosed upon my imagination. Remember he told us before about the imagination? So, I mean, I guess what he's trying to portray here is an image of obsession. But he doesn't, he commits the same sin as Megan, in my opinion, is that guilty of not buckling him in, guilty of not closing the door properly, guilty of letting him fall out of the car. Those are my guesses, stepfather. Anyway, I lost track of what I was saying because that's how I roll. The creatures have been loosed upon his imagination. All right. Okay, I'm going to try to get through the paragraph. I now understand that these monsters symbolize. Oh, the thing I was going to say is the sin of Megan, which is telling and not showing, right? So he could have made vignettes or scenes where his mom comes into the room and finds him sitting on the couch holding his blanket watching Dracula, watching Bela Lugosi, and says to him, John, shouldn't you be in bed? And him going, but and then her going, well, okay, just don't stay up too late. All of that could have been shown, and then we wouldn't have had the thing of because she felt such guilt. We would have been able to pick up on that from the clues in the writing, which is what makes a good fucking story, John. Okay. Next paragraph, I'm going to read the whole thing before I say anything. I now understand that these monsters symbolized death, plain and simple, staking a massive claim on my naively impressionistic mind. No child should have to face the constant threat of death every day, whether real or imaginary. I had joined admittance into an unenviable club of children facing terminal illnesses, war, cancer, and severe abuse, although no one understood the magnitude of my symptoms at the time. Today, I would have been diagnosed with childhood post-traumatic stress disorder. My symptoms were classic, again with the dash, constant flashbacks, nightmares, depression, anger, isolation, fear, and insomnia. On most days, the PTSD club door remained locked, and there was no way out except to venture into my turbulent dreams, which greeted me with the slight relief of engaging the monsters head on. At least in my dreams, I could confront my enemies head on. Just said that. Even as I lost every battle I ever fought. During the day, my flashbacks were incessant, bombarding me with a frequency and intensity that would be hard to describe. You're a writer, John. Describe it. I remember one day in first grade when my body was so soaked with sweat that the teacher believed I had just fallen into a pond. She asked me if I had somehow during recess taken a swim in a nearby pond. I said no. I had stayed inside the entire time. The constant sweats became an uncontrollable anxiety pervading every night and day of my young existence. By age 6, I had lost control of my body to an unrelenting anxiety. My mind refused to focus on thoughts other than traumatic ones, and my shame from these perverse concessions was becoming unbearable. I fell into a dark childhood depression. Jesus Christ, I'm going to fall into a dark childhood depression if we're not careful. Okay, so many things wrong here. Um, Again, with the sins of the Megan, uh, like, are you writing a story, or are you giving us a lecture, or are you writing a memoir from now, looking back? Like, what is your pick a fucking lane, dude? Because you shouldn't be having to tell us that you now understand that these monsters symbolize death, blah blah blah. You should be showing us, and we as fucking grown-ups reading this should be able to pick up on that. But you can't write for shit. Like the lecture, no child should have to face this constant threat, and now he's in this. It's just all very clumsy. I had joined admittance. So you had either gained admittance or you had joined. One or the other. Pick a lane, get an editor. Of children facing terminal illnesses, war, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So no one understood the magnitude of his symptoms at the time. So, considering that no one ever spoke about the incident ever again for 40 years, how would anybody even have any chance to understand what your symptoms were? Right? How would you have been diagnosed if your family didn't talk about it, your father never knew about it, and your mother never mentioned it for 40 years? How would you have been diagnosed? Who would have done that? That doesn't make any sense. His symptoms were classic, so now he's like, again, show don't tell. Why are you listing off your symptoms instead of writing scenes in which these symptoms show themselves? Because it's just not engaging in any way at all. And because it's so bad, and because none of it makes sense, I don't even believe it anyway. And so the whole thing here is to get you to care about this little kid, right? John's whole thing is that he cares so much about the children, right? It's the children. And yet he has not managed to make me give one single shit about this kid, who has apparently been traumatized beyond anything any of us could ever imagine. And I'm a pretty empathetic person normally, right? Normally, a story like that about a child suffering something like that would affect me in some way. And I don't feel affected at all, except that I feel irritated by how bad it is. So that's not a good look for a writer, right? If you're trying to engage people, is to be completely annoying. It's just not good. And it doesn't make any sense. The slight relief of engaging my monsters head on, even though I lost every battle I ever fought, like, how would that be a relief? It feels like it would just be, the torture would be that it never ends, right? That even in your sleep you don't get any relief from these symptoms. It doesn't make sense. And I remember one day in first grade, like, again, why don't you tell us the fucking story? Do a scene of little John in school with, quotation marks and stuff for the speech and everything. Like, it's just so garbage. And again, he should have split the paragraph between even as I lost every battle I ever fought. He should have got on to a new paragraph about during the day. And I cannot believe, again, that a teacher would come across a child that was soaked from head to foot as though they had been literally gone swimming in a pond, and would not be alarmed by that and follow up, right? Like, that does not make sense. It doesn't make sense. By age 6, he had lost control of his body to an unrelenting anxiety. His mind refused to focus on thoughts other than traumatic ones, and my shame from these. Okay. It was becoming unbearable. So that is not a picture of a vagina, although it does look like one, and maybe that's deliberate. I don't know, but I think it's meant. It's like a cavern or something in a rock formation, and I guess it's supposed to signify being in a tough, being stuck between a rock and a hard place or something. I don't know. Anyway, my response to these circumstances was isolation and spending increasingly large amounts of time in nature. So, isolation and spending increasingly large amounts of time don't agree. So, it should be isolating and spending time. Isolating and spending time. Those things agree with each other. An editor is your friend, John. A small tributary of the Get ready, people. The animal stories will be upon us soon. A small tributary of the Chicago River ran behind our home, and I spent most of my free time either in or on the river, trying desperately to fathom its secrets. Yeah, that's what he was doing when he was 6. He was trying to fathom the secrets of the river, because that's what 6-year-olds do. They try to fathom the secrets of rivers, and maybe also rock formations. Maybe. Hi, Ski Utah. Nice to ski ya. I'll be here all night. Perhaps a glimpse into the mysteries of the river might assuage my pain. Again, this is not the language of a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old. And while you shouldn't be necessarily writing in the language of a 6-year-old, this is too fancy pants for what he's talking about, right? 6-year-olds don't try to fathom the secrets of the river or think about perhaps a glimpse of the mysteries assuaging their, like that. Just, it doesn't. Everything is distracting from the story, and it is such a not believable story in the first place. It's just like, it's so bad. It's so bad. I don't know how to even fathom the reality of the psychologist who thought this was good and that he wanted to put it on his website where potential clients could read it. My brain is not computing that. I mean, Megan, yes, she's a fucking idiot, and she pretends that she's a life coach, but John is actually a psychologist with an actual degree. So, my God. All right, here we go. Back to the fathoming the secrets of the river. If only he could catch a glimpse, if only momentarily he would assuage his pain, if the heart. Oh my God. This is what they mean when editors say, don't be afraid to kill your little darlings, because obviously he loved this sentence and it is so fucking gross. He says, if the heart is a lonely hunter, then I had been marooned on an island in the middle of the Chicago River, unable to swim ashore even with my home in sight. So, the heart is a lonely hunter? is the title of the novel by Carson McCullers and has no business in his bio without some kind of reference to what he's talking about. And if the heart is a lonely hunter, I mean, the heart is a lonely hunter is a fantastic metaphor, right? It's beautiful. And John has stolen it and tortured it. Uh, so the heart's a lonely hunter, then he had been marooned on an island. Like, what? That doesn't even make any logical sense. So, once again, an editor is your friend. I was lonely beyond compare, trapped in a body and mind that only knew despair and pain. At 6 years old, I saw no way out. My mother always watched me from afar, aware of my suffering and isolation, aware of our secret. She felt powerless to intervene and afraid to broach a taboo topic. So, what's the taboo topic exactly? And how do you know all these things? Because I mean, I feel like he could have told this whole story and he could have used all kinds of nice little scenes to show all of his symptoms and to show this, right? The mother watching him from afar to show him, like, could have done all that. And then he could have got to the point eventually where he has the conversation with his mom and they talk over 40 years later how she felt at the time. He could have done all those things. But to me, like, it's not only like it's bad writing, but it's lazy because it's like he can't be bothered to do it right. He's trying to jam everything into one paragraph instead of taking his time to to do it properly. And to me, that's insulting to the reader that you can't even be bothered to take the time to tell the story properly. It's shameful from someone who positions himself in the way that he does. It's shameful behavior to try to sell this crap as like I'm going to be the person to help you read my story and see how insightful I am. It's absolutely the most unprofessional and embarrassing bullshit. That, I mean, he's taken it down obviously, and the only reason we were able to see it is because of the wonderful Wayback Machine, but on the Internet Archive. But God. So he had to mention his mom there, I guess, so that he could get to this point here where he says one evening 6 months after the accident. And I'm thinking 6 months after the accident. So by this point, if all of the things in your dream are getting bigger week after week after week, we have had, we've got 24 weeks now. Like, we are literally looking at like Jupiter sized things coming for him in his dreams. And that's all, like, I'm completely distracted from the story because that's what I'm thinking about because of how shitty his writing was from before. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, going on. One evening, 6 months after the accident, my mother entered my room with a book. It was a slim book, but vibrant with pictures and strange creatures. It would be pictures of strange creatures, not pictures and strange creatures. There are not actual strange creatures. You don't open, it's not a pop-up book. You don't open the book and like there's creatures there. John. At the heart of the book was a small boy named Max. Yeah, like you would not know to call it the heart of a book. And again, you're writing the story about a 6-year-old, so it's the wrong language to use. A small boy named Max. The book was Maurice Sendak's, he says Sendak, thank you, Where the Wild Things Are. My mother pulled me close and began to read. She entered your room and now she's pulling you close? Did something happen in between that or what? Again, lazy. Hi, Janice. I can't see you, but I can see everybody saying hi. Ugh, so gross. By the end, I had begun to cry. Okay, wait. My mother pulled me close and began to read. I was mesmerized. By the end, I had begun to cry. At first, only imperceptibly. You couldn't perceive his crying? Please. Imperceptibly is the wrong word. But my tears quickly gained momentum until they refused to stop. And they refused to stop. Not until they refused to stop, John. My mother was taken aback, confused. Everything's okay, she said. It's just a book. Okay. I don't have the strength to address every single stupid, terrible, bad rating thing he does. So we'll just move on. But it wasn't just a book. It contained all the magic and mystery and romance of all the greatest novels wrapped up into one, especially for a child. How the fuck would a 6-year-old know that it contains all of the magic, mystery, and romance of the greatest novels? How would you know that? That is not the appropriate thing to be saying. You're talking about a 5-year-old. It was the greatest book he'd ever read. It was the most captivating story he'd ever heard. It was many, many things. But to compare it to all of the greatest novels ever written when you're talking about a 6-year-old, please fuck off. No book before or since. Again. No book before had ever got my attention. We don't need to know and since. It takes you out of the story, it's distracting, and it's bad writing. No book before or since has had such an impact upon my life. It was my hero's journey, my odyssey, my lifeline. He likes threes. Megan also likes threes. The plot, colon. Why? Why are you writing like that? Max is sent to his room by his mother without his dinner for being unruly and acting wild. In his room, he takes an imaginary journey to visit the wild things where he both plays with and rules over them. He leaves when he misses his family, returning home to a hot meal. He returns home to maternal love. You just said returns home in the last sentence, John. The level of recognition and hope I experienced after that first reading was indescribable. The tears were real, deep, and heartfelt. I had connected to a profound sense of possibility in Max, one capable of ending my torment. A sense of possibility could end your torment? Really? A sense of possibility. Wow. The tears were real. I had my mother read and reread Wild Things every night, sometimes 2 or 3 times each night before sleep. I wanted to venture into the land of Nod with Max every evening. He was my guide, my compass, my soulmate. Again, with the threes. You just did that. It's annoying. And a 5-year-old wouldn't call it the land of Nod. So please fuck off with that. Max is sent to his room for being too wild. You just said that. I was sent to my room so many times for being too wild, consumed by the rage of a stricken child with PTSD. On one occasion, before Sunday school, I barricaded my door and refused to attend church. I was 6 years old. That evening, I was forced to remain in my room as punishment, even after the barricade had been removed. On my first day of school in first grade, I threatened to hurt the teacher if she was too mean to the class. My mother sent me to my room that evening without dinner. Alone in my room, I again barricaded the door and refused to come out. I had only been protecting the other students from harm, I protested. My mother disagreed. To my room I went. You were already in your room with the door barricaded, so you can't to my room I went after you're already in your room. Again, show don't tell. It's literally like if there's one maxim you need to remember about writing, it's show don't tell. If you're writing fiction or you're writing a memoir or you're writing an autobiography or something. Max traveled by private boat to visit the wild things. During a torrential downpour and with the floodgates to the Chicago River open, I decided to launch the small family rowboat into the angry Chicago River. Okay, so you again, it's like everything has just got to be ramped up to the nth degree. So torrential downpour, floodgates open, small family into the angry Chicago River, swept downstream into the swirling rapids, barely staying afloat. He's 6. Near a small bridge, some 30 minutes later, the Chicago Fire Department pulled me to safety as the rowboat had already taken on so much water it was miraculous it had remained afloat. How did it remain afloat, John? Was it literally a miracle? Like, what are you even fucking talking about? And how does he get the family rowboat? Like, literally, did nobody ever watch him? But wait, there's more. Yeah, so much more. 30 minutes? 30 minutes. He's swirling in the torrential downpour, the floodgates, and the angry Chicago. 30 minutes. 6 years old. And then somehow the fire brigade just shows up. No mention of how they knew he was there, of any call from his parents, of any, like, nothing. There's no story here, right? He can't even be arsed to tell the fucking story. Maurice says Max went after the family dog. That's why his mom sent him to bed. He wasn't a victim. He was being a brat. Yeah. It's garbage. Anyways, 30 minutes later, my mother referred to this incident as my second life. Oh, okay. So they were allowed to talk about the incident of the torrential downpour and the floodgates and the angry Chicago River and the rescue from the fire department, but we're not allowed to talk about the semi truck. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense because presumably John's mom would have been responsible for him at the time that he got away and got into the river and nearly died, just as she was responsible for him when he fell out of the truck or the car and into the pathway of the truck. So why is this story any different? That's interesting. It doesn't make any sense. But we don't need any sense in the world of Megan and John. We now had another secret. Oh, okay, we do have a secret, but she mentions that secret, but not the first secret. Okay. Max's boat never came close to sinking in a raging storm. He played it safe. So you're like Max or you're not like Max? What is it? Why is that in there? An editor would say, so what is your point? They would say it nicely because you have a little fucking fragile ego, but they would query that and say, it seems like you're trying to compare yourself to Max here, to liken yourself to him, only that at the end you're not. So what's the point of that? And how is it helping the story? And you know what I mean? Max tamed the wild things with his stare and was appointed king of all the wild things. I dug up a 110-pound alligator snapping turtle during one drought season on the Chicago River and appointed myself king of the river. How much does a 6-year-old weigh? Is he 10 now? How much does a 10-year-old weigh compared to a alligator snapping turtle? Just curious. I feel like that should be another family secret coming along here. I held a stick high above my head, just as Max had waved his staff over the wild things, and declared my victory over the same river that 3 months earlier had nearly taken my life. The snapping turtle was later donated to the Chicago Aquarium because it was such a massive and wondrous creature. We have to check that out. Find out if that actually happened. So I don't understand, because I thought that his body and his anxiety, and he was so terribly, he was cured from all of that. by the Wild Things story, and now he's just out there taking on the whole world without fear or favor? Like, what is happening? I don't understand. At 7, 6, whatever, yeah, 7, 8 maybe now. I have to get in touch with the Chicago Aquarium and find out if this happened. Max leads a parade of wild things, each one dancing and jumping with glee and abandon until he sends them to bed. I led a procession of frogs and turtles and hamsters and rabbits in and out of the house with I remember this from last time, with reckless abandon until I set them back free into the wilds of the Chicago River. So turtles, hamsters, and rabbits and frogs, reckless abandon. Those things match up. And what is he talking about? He had wild animals following him? Well, he, like, what? That doesn't happen. I mean, maybe your pet rabbit would follow you. What is he even talking about? The native Chicago River hamsters. It's true, right? Max feels lonely and wants to be where someone loved him best of all. So it would be Max felt lonely and wanted to be where someone loved him best of all. You need to make the tenses agree with each other when you're using a quote, John. He gives up his crown and returns home, even as the wild things threaten to eat him up. More than anything after my accident, I wanted to feel love, to be acknowledged and held and reminded of the truism that love conquers all. Okay, but the truism? Wouldn't it be the truth? Doesn't truism mean not true? Well, maybe it's right. So, okay, a truism, a statement that is obviously true and says nothing new or interesting. So, this isn't a truism because it's obviously false, even though it says nothing new or interesting. But still, I feel like he's not trying to say something that says nothing new or whatever. You know what I mean? I think he means to say, I wanted to be reminded of the truth that love conquers all. Because why would you be wanted to be reminded of something that actually doesn't mean anything? My mother, who held our secret for so long, later confided to me that her mother never held her, never told her how much she loved her. Maybe her mother didn't love her. Maybe if she told her how much she loved her, she would have said, "I don't actually love you at all." And maybe it was a kindness. I'm being glib, sorry. Always holding her at the puritanical distance required for relationships to feel safe. Love is implicit and unspoken, she said. It's just bad manners to be too effusive with one's emotions. I mean, certainly there are families that struggle to express emotions and to mirror those emotions in their children. Absolutely, that's true. And by all accounts, John's family was one of those families. And it does account for the fact that he is such a fucked up idiot now. Um, but yeah, it's just more bad writing. I realize now my mother lived with an inexhaustible guilt. On a humdrum spring morning, without warning, on the way to pick up her son, her other son, obviously, and with the door slightly ajar, her son falls onto the highway. Only inches and seconds and pure luck saved his life. He just falls onto the highway in present tense and now saved in the past tense. So it should be save his life. An editor is your friend. She forgot to check the door. She accelerated onto the highway. She knew, although never spoke about it, that her second son should have died that day. The sun. Okay, that little device of the sun is annoying and it's not working. The sun would inform you, as a psychologist, that if you replaced that same accident, that if you replicated that same accident in a tightly controlled experiment, you might expect, with slim probability only, one survival for each 1,000 trials. No other words needed to be spoken about the accident. The odds spoke for themselves. But she didn't ask the psychologist's son, so how did the odds speak? I don't get it. You just said that she didn't ask you. Every sleepless night, every sweat-soaked sheet, every nighttime scream, every agonized yell and angry outburst, my mother knew what each and every gesture meant. Those are not gestures, but okay. We alone shared this secret, a terrible secret that both strengthened and detracted from the parent child bond. From the moment of the accident, our relationship would never be the same, wrapped in an ambivalence and love and hatred all at the same time. An ambivalence? I think that ambivalence is the word, not an ambivalence. I needed a love and a nurturance. She simply could not provide. And she needed a forgiveness I could never give her. In most ways, our relationship always remained at an impasse, stuck in the limbo between an avoidance and acknowledgement of a love both taken and given at the same time, but somewhere in the unspoken truce of trauma and secrecy between a mother and her son not laid, lay the remnants of healing from a book with a boy named Max who conquered the wild things and returned home to the place where he was loved best of all. My God, the run-on sentence. Reading The Wild Things itself to a wounded son became a place of healing, a gift my mother could only show but never tell. He literally says show, don't tell right here. And honestly, I think if your parents show you love all the time and don't necessarily say they love you all the time, I think you're probably all right. So that doesn't make sense either. Sorry, I got lost. So she was healing him, but it sounds like he was never healed. I don't know. Finding Max, it turns out, was the greatest gift my mother had ever given to me. How about the greatest gift my mother gave me? And his reach in my life, how about his impact in your life? Or his effect on your life? Started small, but began to spread with a slow intensity, like the tremors from a small ocean earthquake, gaining momentum and moving towards the shore as an unassailable tsunami. Like, who tries to assail a tsunami? Unstoppable? Or just a tsunami? I think a tsunami would do it. 90% of the adjectives could go. The adjectives and the adverbs. There. Megan had the same problem, right? And it's actually another one of the very simple maxims of editing is like, get rid of most of your adjectives and adverbs. They don't add to your writing, they make it messy and distracting. It's not that you should never use adjectives. I mean, obviously, a brown coat is, that's great. But if you can't find le mot juste, then, get a fucking thesaurus. Don't just keep adding adjectives. There was the family trip. What? What do you mean there was? What are you talking about? all of a sudden there was. So this is the new thing. Every paragraph for the next many paragraphs starts with there was. So wow, great use of that device, John. There was the family trip west at age 12. Your family was 12? Your family was 12. There was the family trip west at age 12 with massively open skies. The trip had massively open skies? Because you're talking about the trip. The trip is the subject of your sentence. And you're saying that it has massively open skies. And trips don't have massively open skies. So, again, completely distracted. Massively open skies and spaces, and the hope that maybe, again, the trip with massively open skies and spaces and the hope and hope. So the trip has hope. The trip is hoping that maybe life, even in its brevity, offered freedom from all the confines of concrete jungles. Because that makes a lot of sense that the trip hoped that. The trip hoped that life, even in its brevity, offered freedom from the confines of concrete jungles. Great sentence, John. With spicy Mexican food so hot I could barely breathe or believe humans could consume such fiery enticements. Enticements? Oh my God. You wouldn't be enticed if they were so hot, though, most people, right? With oceans and body surfing in Los Angeles and cliff diving off of Dana Point. What is with those? What do you mean with those? Do you understand what a semicolon is and how it works? Clearly not. Ugh, moving on. There was the Grand Canyon, a gorge so deep, impenetrable? It's a gorge. You can go in it. That's penetrating. What do you... Get a dictionary, man. Impenetrable and unimaginable. So, I could only watch in awe as we hiked into the lower strata of the canyon. You could only watch, or could you hike as well? Because that doesn't make sense. I realized at age 12, not that the canyon was too vast, but that my imagination had been too small to envision it. Except if you recall, we were envisioning things that were literally the size of Jupiter within 6 months. So how can he not envision the Grand Canyon? Like the whole thing was about his imagination was tormenting him with all these giant things. And now his imagination is too limited to consider a giant hole in the ground. I needed to somehow enlarge my imagination to rethink the possible merely through an encounter with a canyon. That's just not the right word. You don't encounter a canyon. After that first trip west, my nightmares began to lessen in intensity. Okay, that's great. I just need to turn on a light because I'm having trouble reading this because it's bright and it's dark behind it. So just give me a second. Sorry. What is it they say? Make good art? Yeah, they do say that. They do say that, yeah. And they act like they do that. But really, they don't do that. They don't do that. Lauren is continuing to get all the interviews. She had the interview with her latest interview is with Lindsay Clancy's psychiatrist, the one who testified. Anyway, There, now we're back to there was. There was the grizzly bear in Glacial National Park at age 16 protecting her cubs. She charged but never followed through with her initial threat when I ran for cover and never looked back. My actions were unsafe in every way. I'm glad I lived to tell the story. Yeah, that's not a story. You didn't tell the story. You said there was the grizzly bear protecting her cubs. Cubs, that's not a story. My actions were unsafe in every way. Why don't you tell us the story so that we can see your actions and then we could judge for ourselves that your actions were unsafe, right? We wouldn't need you to tell us. You could show us. There was the mountain lion who followed me up a desolate trail in Arches National Park at age 17 without my awareness. And when she turned around and made herself known, we stared at each other for several minutes before she decided to move on. That stare lasted an eternity. Was it several minutes or was it an eternity? You literally just said, like, we stared at each other for what felt like an eternity before she decided to move on, is how an editor might have fixed that very, very simply. But actually, by this point, the editor would be probably telling you, actually, that's not true because editors are generally very nice people and they do their best for you. But this is so bad that as an editor, you would almost have to rewrite it, right? Like, I mean, one of the things that as an editor that you kind of struggle to do is to keep the author's voice, right? You don't want it to be your voice. You don't want to write it the way you would write it. You want to keep their voice. But the struggle in this is to find the voice. Like, what is the fucking voice? So you would literally be rewriting massive parts of this, even to make it legible to people, right? To a reader that is gonna. It's so bad, but that's not really your job as an editor, right? You're not really supposed to do that. That's right. You're supposed to just, I mean, people shouldn't be giving you absolute dog shit like this to edit. But I mean, you could take something like this and work with it to the point that you could get something out of it that would be, like this could be quite a good memoir if he did it properly. But he's just so lazy that instead of setting up each of these encounters as their own story, as their own chapter through which, excuse me, he's growing and evolving, or he's getting worse, or he's evincing these, his behavior was dangerous in every way, that kind of thing, like that could, that could be shown to be like some sort of, he doesn't even care if he lives or dies. Like, there's so much that could be done here. But the only thing that he bothered to do was make like 10 paragraphs all starting with there was, there was, there was. And it's just not good enough. It's incredibly lazy. There were the pre-dawn swims at the Hurricane Island Outward Bound School in Maine during the summer before my freshman year in college. How I hated the frigid cold waters and the suspicion of dangerous creatures lurking below my outstretched body, gliding over the surface of the lake. Okay. I can't. Like Max, I had no desire to be eaten up by wild things I could not see. So what? Is this supposed to be there were the pre-dawn swims? This doesn't sound like an encounter with something dangerous, which is what everything has been so far. So again, an editor would go, this one doesn't quite fit. Is there some way that we could, maybe like imaginary things versus real things is not quite fitting for me. Oh, there was the Buffalo Stampede, lest we forget the Buffalo Stampede, just west of the Sage Creek campground in the Badlands National Park when I was 23 years old. Hiking along an elevated grassy embankment, The morning after a damp evening spent sleeping in a miserably wet tent. I think you could just say a wet tent. Everybody understands that a wet tent is miserable. I felt the ground begin to rumble. A herd of buffalo had been grazing several miles below in the river, but I did not pay much attention to them. When the first 3-ton buffalo appeared over the edge of the slightly elevated hill and stopped for an instant to make eye contact with me, my heart rate accelerated like a runaway train. Oh, did it? Like a runaway train? Wow, that's not a fucking stale metaphor at all. Not at all stale. Wow, really evocative of things I've seen a million times. 2,000 buffalo emerged from the mist. 2,000, eh? He was just able to, off the top of his head, count the buffalo herd. Like, this is one of those times when you have to do something before you say there were 2,000 buffalo so that people can just believe that without going, well, how do you know that? And being distracted from the story. Ancient TV. Oh, here, I gotta put up the herd of buffalo. Hang on, we got an actual herd of buffalo here. There we go. There's a very ruly buffalo, I have to say. 2,000 buffalo emerged from the mist, and I took cover behind a small sagebrush about 15 feet from my hiking position. That don't make sense. A hiking position? You don't hike in place, so there can't be a hiking position. So that's distracting as well. The herd parted along the sagebrush, dividing equally between left and right with me in the center, and they left me unscathed. I now consider the American buffalo to be a kindred spirit. Please fuck off with that. So if any of you ever watched Farley Mowat's Never Cry Wolf, the hiking position, yeah, it's called the trail. There's that scene where he gets caught in the midst of a herd of stampeding caribou. And it's insane in the movie. The scene is extremely memorable. And I feel like he just stole this straight out of that movie. I do love the smell of sagebrush too. Sage is gorgeous. The color of it. There's part of BC, when you get into the interior of British Columbia around like Merritt and Kamloops and stuff, we have that. That's what it's like. It's all sage, and the mountains are all that kind of orange and yellow, and all the muted colors of the flowers and the sage everywhere. It's absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, now he considers the American buffalo a kindred spirit because they didn't trample over him because he hid behind a bush. So, not sure. Like dances with buffaloes, I guess. I don't know. There was the summit of Mount Baker in Seattle. Mountain biking the White Rim Trail in the Canyonlands, delicate arch outside of Moab, rafting on the Green River, canyoneering Pine Creek in Zion and Neon Canyon in Escalante, mountain biking the uncut trails in Yellowstone, ice climbing outside of Telluride, and too many nights to count spent alone in vast, lonely, desolate, and austerely beautiful. Okay. Desert places, all things wild. Again, that's a sentence fragment, John. It's not a fucking sentence. And he just got too lazy to even bother to spell these things out. He just lumped them all into one paragraph. Most of them in one sentence. As these many wild things pierced my soul, the symptoms of PTSD began to lessen their grip on my psyche. Oh, that's nice. So the soul helped the psyche. Nice. The nightmares decreased, as did the fitful sleep. Fewer monsters paid nightly visits, and my dreams became populated by rivers, canyons, and mountaintops. As I entered graduate school to become a psychologist, an inevitable step in my personal evolution, the journey evolved from outside landscapes to internal terrain where the wild things hid beneath tough exteriors, addictions, and mounds of fear, reaching far beyond anything the visible eye could detect. What are you talking about? What is reaching? What? The journey evolved from outside landscapes to internal terrain where the wild things hid beneath tough exteriors, addictions, and mountains of fear reaching far beyond anything the visible eye could see. So the mounds of fear are reaching far beyond anything the visible eye could see, because that's the subject, right? The mounds of fear. It makes no sense. These internal landscapes were just as treacherous and equally wild. Max knew this terrain well. How? How did Max know this terrain well? Please explain. I thought that Max was just a kid who had a wild imagination when he got sent to his room. Now he's an addict with mounds of fear and a tough exterior? What the fuck is even happening here? I don't remember that part of the story. I do not remember that. In my third year of graduate school, there was Martin. Oh, God. Okay. Ugh, get ready. Please prepare yourself. In my third year of graduate school, there was Martin, age 8, who had been Is it raining? You guys don't know if it's raining. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time reading this. In my third year of graduate school, there was Martin, age 8, who had been repeatedly assaulted and beaten by his uncle for over 2 years. Why? This is the bio on his website for his psychiatry practice. If you were a person that was coming to him for help to deal with the trauma of childhood sexual abuse, and you came across this, how do you think you might feel? No, this is not Jeremy the Herder. I think John's Jeremy the Herder. Is it Jeremy? Gabriel the Herder. Oh, God, it's just like, what? He climbed under a chair in the fetal position. You can't climb in the fetal position, John. Those two things don't make sense together. So you don't climb under a chair, first of all. Climbing is up. So you would maybe crawl under the chair, and then you would curl yourself into the fetal position. You don't climb into a chair in the fetal position. It don't make no sense. He climbed under a chair in the fetal position and began to scream. Really? He just came into your office and he climbed under a chair and began to scream. That makes sense. And scream some more. Again, sentence fragment. You don't have the skill to use a sentence fragment properly. Unholy, wailing, mournful screams. Screams so sad and dejected, I wanted to disown being a human being. Wouldn't you just want to disown humanity? Or your membership? Or when you want to resign your membership to the human race or something? Yeah. So this is still one sentence. Okay. To disavow the possibility that any human being might be capable of inflicting such pain on a defenseless child, I pulled up my chair close to Martin and handed him a stuffed animal tiger. His screams gave way to tears, bundles of tears. Yes, if you bundle your tears, you can get a better deal on them. So Just saying, not sure you guys know that. Tears so profound and deep and moving, it was hard to imagine any child could have survived for so long with such suffering. Tears are not profound. Tears are salt water stuff that come out of your eyes. They cannot be deep and profound. The suffering can be deep and profound. The pain can be deep and profound. The healing that he's experiencing because you handed him a stuffed tiger, which nobody ever thought to ever do before, could be healing and profound. But the tears themselves are not. The bundles of tears. Like, what even fuck? Martin began to heal once he could begin to acknowledge the wild things he so desperately wanted to hide. Oh, I see. So handing him a tiger made him acknowledge the wild things that he desperately wanted to hide. That is incredible. I think I can be a child psychologist now. I'm leaving YouTube to go start my child psychology practice. I'm going to write a bio. I knew his tears all too well. Did you? Because you got almost hit by a car, you are the same as Martin, who was repeatedly sexually assaulted and beaten by his uncle for over 2 years. That's the same. I knew those wild places inside. I was on my way to becoming a psychologist. How is that about you, John? Like, what the literal fuck? There were so many wild encounters as a psychologist. So he's talking about a session with an 8-year-old child who has been repeatedly assaulted over a period of 2 years as a wild encounter, because that fits with his where the wild things are theme, I guess. Like, literally, it's like Lauren comparing herself to Tylee. John comparing himself to a child who has been betrayed and abused horrifically by someone who's supposed to love and trust him, versus John fell out of a car because his mother, forgot to check the door, and then lived with the guilt of it for the rest of her life. These things are not the same. And I know that, Martin cannot be the name of a real child that he had anything to do with. But if it was, my God. There were so many wild encounters as a psychologist. There was Bonnie, the middle-aged CEO who controlled everything in her life, including me. Only after acknowledging the wreck her life had become with numerous. So how is he a fucking psychologist now? After just telling us of all the fucking how fucked up he's been his whole life. Only after acknowledging the wreck her life had become with numerous failed relationships, 3 divorces, 5 estranged children, and multiple harassment claims at work did she begin to awaken. She never wept and never mourned the past. She sounds like a fucking abuser, John. 5 estranged children? She's got 5 estranged children. And you're like, oh, poor Bonnie. Bonnie sounds like an abuser. Great psychologist has failed to pinpoint the actual abuser. I mean, we can expect that of cops at a traffic stop who decide that, what's his name? Gabby Petito's boyfriend, that he was the victim. But a psychologist? Please. She began to awaken. She never wept and never mourned the past. No regrets, she said. I'm so rich I can buy my happiness. She couldn't, and she knew it. Love, true, authentic, genuine love, has no price tag. I think you'd have just said love has no price tag, and I don't think you even needed to say that. Feelings were not her strong suit. Strong suit? Feelings were not her strong suit. Like, again, an editor would tell you not to use these kind of phrases that are these throwaway phrases that people use in everyday conversation because they just sound shitty and like you can't be bothered. Although over time, feelings were not her strong suit. This is how a psychologist is describing a patient. Right? Although over time and across several years, the hard exterior began to crack and she let some tenderness in. She fell in love and everything changed. Oh, what about the first 3 marriages? She wasn't in love for those? The woman sounds like a fucking abuser, John, and you sound like an idiot. The controlling, overly harsh, and punitive self gave way to a gentler internal wilderness, a wild guided by self-compassion held at bay for so many years because of the fears of being weak and taken advantage of by men. Oh, it's so sad. She had to abuse everybody because she was afraid. It is very sad. Bonnie had been molested by her father for many years as a child. Now she could finally engage that wild part of herself that had so frightened her and kept her feelings of sad. I mean, I'm sorry for Bonnie if she was molested as a child, but a lot of people who are abused as children turn into abusers themselves. And he hasn't given me any indication that she was anything other than an abuser and that, or what he did to actually help her. Any indication at all. He just says over time and over whatever, she started to get better somehow. There was Bob. Please prepare yourself for this one. There was Bob, whose father had ferociously belittled and abused him until he could fight back as a young adult. He remained helpless and ashamed throughout his life, devoid of any real self. Everyone was out to get him. Every girlfriend was cheating on him. Paranoia sets in when the self disappears. Okay. On one drunken evening, Bob found a rope, and we will not carry on with that. I don't even want to read it, it's so bad. He's basically saying that he hanged himself from the roof, and he describes it as taking flight. So I would like to invite John Matthias to fuck all the way off with his little where the wild things are metaphor that he's using to describe someone in so much despair that they took their own life. It's disgusting. I can't even read it. I'm not going to read it. Sometimes an ugly wild prevails, a wild that knows no boundaries and has no limits. That wild only destroys, refusing to obey any logic or compassion, like a cancer unmoored by natural constraints. I think like a cancer would have done it, because now I'm thinking about what natural restraints are there on cancer. We have like all of this research and development ongoing constantly to find cures for cancer because there isn't any natural restraint. Cancer unmoored. He's talking about a man who took his own life. Bob has been the only client I have ever lost. Bob is, Bob was. not has been. That doesn't make any sense. And it haunts me every day. Oh, does it haunt you every day? Is that why you're talking about it so glibly? Because it haunts you every day? Is that why you're including Bob as an anecdote in your bio, a pithy little anecdote about taking flight where the wild things are? You are John's immense shame. Well, I hope that's not true. Right? It's incredibly disrespectful, Gucci. It's gross. What a way to talk about a patient. Wild, wilderness, wild things come in many forms. Wild is an adjective. Wilderness is a noun. And wild things is an adjective and a noun. So I feel like we could have just gone with wild things come in many forms, because that doesn't make sense. And I feel like poking myself in the eye to avoid having to try to parse your garbage sentences. Wild wilderness, wild things come in many forms and shapes with endless variations. What they all share is uncertainty, unpredictability, and adventure. Uncertainty and unpredictability are the same, aren't they? No, they're not. Okay, but still. In the wild, you might just perish, but you could just as easily make peace with a few unruly monsters who refuse to be tamed. Oh, really? Could you, in the wild, you could just go make peace with the fucking mountain lion and the grizzly bear? Could you? In the wild? Or is this a metaphor? Because before those were real wild things you were talking about, and now we seem to be into the land of metaphors, but I can't follow because this is dog shit writing. My mother, watching her son spiral into helplessness and despair and unable to reach him, it sounds like she didn't try. Except for the time that she tried to reach you by giving you that book, and it worked. So again, I'm confused. You're contradicting yourself, and this is dog shit. Unable to reach him, purchased a book about wild things so many years ago, perched by her side. The act of reading and togetherness, so the act of reading and togetherness was apparently perched beside John's mother. Because the act of reading, what was it? The act of reading and togetherness is the subject of the sentence. So it's the one doing the action, and apparently it is perched beside his mother. Created the safety to bring the wild things into the light of day, into awareness, and forever changed that little boy's future. Did it? Because you're pretty fucked up, dude. Psychologists always pull up that chair beside their clients and take in the stories and wild things that compose a life. That's just like a random sentence that he tacked on to the end of that paragraph for some reason. Like, what? What is that? What? A second ago you were, well, I mean, obviously he means he was perched by the side of his mother, not that the reading and togetherness was perched beside his mother, but that's where he was, right? And now we're talking about psychologists pulling up their chair beside their clients. I have never seen a psychologist pull up a chair beside their client. They're usually sitting across from you. No? I mean, I guess if you're in analysis, but that's psychiatry. That's not psychology. That's different. All of these things, right? The point is like what the reason I'm pointing all of these out is because that's how distracting and bad this writing is, right? That you can't even follow it because it's so distracting. It doesn't make sense that your brain just goes off into all these other places. So let me praise all the wild things that make life precious. Oh, okay. Now we're praising the wild things. I guess a runaway semi truck and an unlocked door are praiseworthy now. And they make life precious. Okay, hang on. I'm just going to read it. So let me praise all the wild things that make life precious, unpredictable, and adventurous. To the raging rivers and the untamed canyons, to the rhinos and the elephants and tigers. It should be to the rhinos and the elephants and the tigers, in my opinion. Because you're saying the grizzly, yeah, right? Like sometimes you're saying the and sometimes not. And it's distracting and it's bad writing. The grizzlies, buffaloes, leopards, mountain lions, sharks, and snapping turtles, to the endangered species and diminishing glaciers, to the are those wild things? To the visionaries, entrepreneurs, artists, musicians, and leaders who risk everything for an uncertain reward. Is he including himself? To the extreme athletes and explorers of the unknown out on the edge of life and death, to the trailblazers and pioneers of the mind, to those game changers who push towards the edge of the known world, physically, mentally, emotionally, to the scientists pushing back the frontiers of knowledge and science, to the books, universities, and professors who seek to upend the status quo and push beyond the barriers of quotidian paradox, to the survivors of trauma and atrocities who provide examples of unimaginable resiliency and courage, and to all the children who dare to dream of a better future and a world without violence, racism, rampant inequality, and climate upheavals. To them. How are you praising them? You didn't praise them. All you did was enumerate them. Not the same thing. But never mind. Wild things all and all wild things. Again, do not be afraid to kill your little darlings. I think he was really proud of that, and it's really twee, and I really hate it. Some may be tamed, but most will not. Wild things can destroy, but they also have the power to heal. Which brings me to the wildest thing of them all, Max. Now he's going to address Max head on. Yeah, this is what Megan does this shit too. God. 1 minute she's writing a memoir of her sex trafficking life. And then the next minute she's directly addressing her readers. You saved my life, and although I could never have known it at the time, I have spent my entire adult life trying to save you. What do you mean? Although I could never have known it at the time. How could you? Stupid, pointless. You saved my life, and I have spent my entire life trying to save you. Would have come rolled off the tongue and not been annoying and stupid and distracting. Although we're already annoyed and feel like this is stupid and distracting because he's directly addressing Max, who is a fictional character. You are the enduring child in us all, unafraid to follow your imagination wherever it leads. You are the story about the sometimes turbulent relationship between an unruly child and his mother, who wants her young son to remain wild but still sends him to his room to tame him. Oh my goodness. The contradictions are crazy. I still struggle, and always will, with a lifelong I forgot about this part. With a lifelong depression. Some days are worse than others, especially when my body refuses to cooperate with my mind. There is this debilitating paralysis that engulfs my bad days, a swirling, pervasive vortex of numbness and pain that refuses to subside no matter how much I wish it away. This pain does not succumb to positive thinking, self-talk, or similar such ruses and mental tricks. It's stubborn, smart, and unrelenting. Staring endlessly at the ceiling fan is sometimes the best I can do on those dark days. So just pray that you don't have an appointment with Dr. John on one of those days, because he's not going to be there for you. And the nightmares still come and go. Occasionally, unexpectedly, a train will run through my dreams. And over my motionless, outstretched body, sometimes an unidentifiable creature will tear into my flesh or eviscerate my heart. No matter. I've already befriended them all, brought them into the wild rumpus of my life and dreams. In spite of my bad marriage, oh no, sorry. In spite of my bad days, my heart has become more resilient over time, in part thanks to Max and the wild things, in part from carrying a lifelong pain coexisting with my mortality and frailty. How does that help? In part from discovering the unconditional love of finally being a parent. Finally, right? You don't have a kid so that you can experience unconditional love. You get a fucking dog for that. You have a kid because you want to express unconditional love. Just saying. The heart, it turns out, can only be bent but never fully broken. Also, not fucking true. What about Bob, who you just explained to us? Sometimes the wild things are, deadly. Sometimes Megan does that. Megan says that same thing too, as though like, oh, anybody, if you're not healing, it's your own fault. You're just not trying hard enough. You're just not making the right choices for yourself. It's, that's your like, seriously, people can get traumatized to the point where they never recover, and they spend their whole lives suffering and trying to cope. I mean, you just have to think about, war vets and what they go through, right? What used to be called shell shock and is now called post-traumatic stress disorder, because that manages us to distance us from the reality of what the fuck happened. War vets have extremely high levels of self-harm and PTSD as a result of the PTSD, right? It's totally irresponsible of him to say shit like that. The heart refuses to stop searching for those untamed places where healing occurs, where wounds can be soothed and mended. Again, that's not fucking true. Like, maybe your heart did or whatever, I don't know. But lots of people struggle and suffer with the trauma and the symptoms of trauma to the point that they end up either intentionally or unintentionally ending their lives prematurely, because they have not recovered and because their heart can't seek anymore because they're just in so much pain. This guy is a fucking psychologist. We're supposed to believe that this guy can tell you whether somebody is going to reoffend? Oh no, their heart has been all healed up now. They're good to go. No problem. Oh, his heart was just seeking some healing. That's why he took that small boy. Like, on my worst days, I pick up Where the Wild Things Are and read it. Max still gives me hope for this planet of diminishing wild things. Also, Where the Wild Things helps on those terrible days when nothing else will. So that's interesting. It's a pretty magical book, this book. And I've recently begun to read The Wild Things to my son as a gift for his first birthday. Didn't you buy the book as a gift? You're reading it to him as a gift? I don't know. I used to read to my kid every night until he was like 13 years old. And I never thought of it as a gift. I never thought of it as a gift. I always thought of it as, time spent together that we both loved. Not that I was giving him a gift. So I just think it's interesting that I feel like that reveals something about him, right? It's this like, oh, I'm being so magnanimous to my son. Like, please fuck off. I prefer to read The Wild Things to him on those bad days when I can't shape a deep, abiding agony burrowing itself into my body and mind, following me everywhere. I want my son to know Max, to grow up with the wild things. I want him to discover all the wild things hidden beneath the surface, lurking in the depths of the unconscious, stirring with the mystery, creativity, tumult, and vitality of life. So maybe just push him out the car next time you're on the highway. Just a suggestion. Maybe just as you're like, as there's a semi coming up to pass you, just open the door and give him a quick shout. Because clearly, I just don't think that the pastel, freshman gear that you dress him in is doing the wild thing that you need him to do. On those bad days when my soul aches and my mortality and fragility bring me closer to the edge of the cavernous abyss of the human heart. The cavernous abyss of the human heart. I think an editor would have said, just to the cavernous abyss would have done it. I closed the book after reading the last page. I turn to my son and say, get ready, people. This is really beautiful. For as long as you remember me, for as long as blood streams through your wild heart, for as long as you remember all your adventures and days and loves and heartaches, for as long as you can touch and taste and experience all the wild things, you can always return home again and again to the place where you are loved best of all. Full circle, people. Full circle. Who talks to a 1-year-old like that? I don't. I mean, we can have, feelings about our children that are certainly that elevated, shall we say. But I think that he thinks that he smashed it there. Right? Let the wild rumpus start. Let us together set the wild things free. Sorry, I guess he was still talking to his son. Yeah, so that's it. Let the wild rumpus start. I think it's let the wild rumpus begin. No? And I think that, again, you're just stealing lines straight out of somebody else's work and not crediting that person. So this is the quote that from his little bio that he chose to put next to that absolutely god awful photo of himself. You've all seen it, I'm sure. Where he just looks like a sweaty fucking caveman. He says, my body had healed, but the emotional wounds from the accident cut an invisibly cavernous swath within my small 5-year-old body that ran deep and wide, touching every capillary and blood vessel, running into and out of my heart, and every nerve ending and axon seeking entrance and exit from my brain. For some reason, that was, it's a god-awful, terrible, terrible sentence. And I would be deeply ashamed. Yeah, I was going to say, well, not for writing it, but for publishing it. But no, even for writing it. I would never write a piece of garbage sentence like that. So, my mind will not recover from the horrible book, from the horrible bio. Is he still pissed at that muffler? I'm going to guess yes. Yes. There is a groundswell of people who despise that muffler, Lucia. A groundswell. So, hoops among us. Yeah, so that's it. That's all I got to say. What time is it? Oh my God, it's 20 after 6. No wonder the dog is looking like he wants to eat my face. Reads like a profoundly empty person trying to imagine what it's like to feel anything. Yeah. Wrote that. Yeah. That's what Megan's book was like, right? That's what Lauren's book is like. These are people who are play acting and mimicking real people with real feelings, right? It's exactly spot on, Maury. You're always exactly spot on, I gotta say. All you guys are so smart and insightful. I'm not sure why I'm the one up here talking. I feel like it should be you guys most of the time. He can feel offended is about all the feels I get from him. Yeah, I just think he's gross. I feel nothing for that child, right? And I mean, if that was his real story, or if he had any skill, or it was the same thing with Megan's story of child sex trafficking. I felt nothing for the child in that story. And like, you know, I I have trouble looking at pictures of children who have been harmed, and I felt zero emotion for that child. So, I mean, I don't necessarily think that the entire story is a complete lie. Maybe some sort of thing happened with the car, but clearly it didn't happen the way that he's describing it because it physically could not have happened that way. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, he's made up huge portions of it, if not the whole thing. Lucia is one of the smart and funny ones. She absolutely is. Lucia's the one-liner queen over here. She is very good with the one-liners. Exactly right. Maury says it's difficult to empathize with them because it all feels so unreal. Exactly. It's not that I wouldn't have empathy for a child in that situation. It sounds, it would be horrendous, right? To be in that kind of have a traumatic incident like that occur and then have your family just act like it never happened. It would be, not only traumatizing, but also very confusing. I mean, the betrayal, the neglect, the thing that you would take on yourself about the things that you would believe about yourself, right? That I'm no good, I'm not worth caring about, I'm not worth taking to the hospital. It seems like even his teachers couldn't be bothered to look into the child that looked like he just came out of the fucking, like, the swamp thing. You know, no follow up with that. Like, it would be horrible to experience like something like that, but he either didn't experience, I mean, he certainly didn't experience what he claims he did. And if he did experience something like it, he certainly didn't uh, paint a picture of it in such a way that I could feel it. Look up reality fantasy. Is that supposed to say confusion? It's common for children 3 to 6 years of age to believe things in their imagination to be real. The trauma after is real. The incident wasn't. Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, now I definitely could be a psychologist once I got that piece of information. That and the hand them a tiger doll thing. And golden. Confustion. It was a long and winding, treacherous, convoluted, contorted, twisted road from the muffler to where the wild things are. It was. It was. I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know if you. Yeah, confusion. Okay, thank you. I'm not sure if you. I think we need some more adjectives, Kathy. More adjectives. Lucia says this Dr. John reading would be more authentic with an awkward wooden faced Lauren sitting next to me begrudgingly. Yeah, it's true. It's true. That reminds me of the picture I'm going to show you guys now because I just came across this today, even though it's old. Um, oh, where is it? Oh, I can't show you because I don't know where it is. Sorry. It's a I don't know where I saved it and I can't be bothered to go find it. It was just a picture of Lauren. I guess in 2023 she had a mole removed and she put a picture of herself. There's this, she's got stitches across her neck and she's like looking in the camera at this really awkward angle and you can see all the pores in her skin and it's all like she just looks absolutely awful. So I'll try to find it for next time. But I will. I'll put up the picture of the milkmaid. Maladaptive daydreaming. You mean children maladaptively daydreaming? Anyway, yeah, I think that's it for me today. I'm about ready to. Well, I need the ladies' room. I'm just gonna say, I need the ladies' room. I need to finish making the dogs dinner, and that involves going up to the corner shop. You know, I moved to this little community where there's two stores, and they're like, 10 kilometers apart or something. And I just happen to live like 600 meters away from one of them. It's literally around the corner. So, hooray, because that means that I don't have to drive 15 kilometers to pick up a thing of milk or something if I forget. So, super excited about that. For those of you who missed the beginning, that is the picture that I bought at the Hospital Auxiliary Thrift Store today in the little town of Seychelles, about 15 kilometers from here. And it is it's Vermeer's The Milkmaid, and it's the very picture that my mom used to have in her kitchen for all of the years that I lived there as a teen and many more besides. So thank y'all. Yeah, I had to actually take down the lemon painting, lemon baked, and put up that one, but I'm going to put the lemon one up again. But I just moved in and there was only one place to hang a picture. So you got tired of that? Yeah, it's a lot of adjectives. It's a lot of work, right? John put a lot of work into coming up with those adjectives. Hard work. What is purple prose? Does purple prose mean like dirty words, or does it just mean really super bad? Yeah, purple prose is writing that is too fancy, wordy, and dramatic. So there you go. The purple prose of John Matthias. So I shall love you and leave you until tomorrow, where I think we are carrying on with Gray Bay, who I have given a rest while she was, dealing with the news of the loss of her brother. But I don't think that that excuses her god awful behavior, lest we forget the lies that she told about Christina and all the rest of the girls. So we will see you guys tomorrow, and until then, have a wonderful evening. Goodbye, everybody.